Good morning. It's good to see everybody today. Know our crowd's a little bit thinner today with some people ill right now, and it's good to see the Horsemen's back and the Strickler's back. It's good seeing you guys. Anybody else back for the first time in a while? Steven, it's good to seeing you again. Anybody else? Didn't want to forget anybody. So glad to have you here. And if you're watching at home or wherever you are, it's good to have you here with us. Thanks for watching. And if you ever find yourself at home and you need to watch, let me know, because we do live stream on our Facebook page, private Facebook page, so it's not just open to everybody, but is open to our family. Well, of course, this has been a busy time for a lot of us. Did you see the moon last night? It was beautiful. As it was coming up, I don't know if you've noticed this, but it's biggest when it's just coming over the horizon. And so as we were trick-or-treating, or we like to call it get candy, the moon was just coming above the tree line, and it looked so big. And even Stephen said, I can see the craters. And so it's just really neat. And also Mars and Jupiter and Saturn were out last night. It's a beautiful creation that God has done, and it glorifies Him all the time. So it's good to see that. Well, picking a leader. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? This is kind of a hot topic nowadays, isn't it? Picking a leader. What kind of leader should we pick? And so the 2020 election toolkit. Wouldn't it be nice if you could go to the store and get that? I just need to go there and get my 2020 election toolkit, and I'll be okay. I don't know what would be in that toolkit, but probably a mask. I don't know. But they don't sell that. There's not a toolkit that you can go out and pick out the right leader. Now, sometimes we wish we could have that when we choose our leaders for whatever it may be, whether it be church, your bridge club, or your whatever, your woodworking club. Let's pick a leader. You may think, it doesn't matter what kind of leader for this kind of group. We just need anybody who's willing to do it, right? Well, that's not really good when you just take anybody who's willing to do it, because then you get anybody. So you have to be careful. We need to be wise in choosing our leaders, right? So read this again, what Ken read so well. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. 1 Timothy 3, verses 1 through 5. It is a trustworthy statement. If any man aspires to the office of overseer, the NIV says leader here, it is a fine work he desires to do. An overseer then must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, skillful in teaching, not overindulging in wine, not a bully, but gentle, not contentious, free from the love of money. He must be one who manages his own household well, keeping his children under control with all dignity. But if a man does not know how to manage his own household, how will he take care of the church of God? Interesting, isn't it? There's quite a few lists there that I think no matter what group you're with, you need to choose a leader that fits quite a few of these qualifications. All right? So it's hard to find a leader that fits all of these, but when you pick a leader of definitely a very influential group, it needs to fit quite a few of these. Now, one of these that really jumps out at me, manages his own household well. This seems so common sense to me, right? And it's not just family, but household. Because household included in that mindset is also finances, making decisions for the family. But of course, the family as well, how are the kids? Okay? If the kids don't show respect to the leader, then how could the leader expect other people to show respect to him? And I love this list. I didn't write it all here, but look at a few of these. Temperate, having patience. Self-controlled, respectable, not a bully. I like one, someone who doesn't overindulge in wine. You can have wine, but don't overindulge in it. And so the list, there's quite a few things here that it gives a good advice of your leader needs to be a part of this. Okay? Husband of one wife was in there as well. So it's interesting. Now, I like this aspect also that should be gentle and contentious, not contentious. Okay? I said and contentious. Gentle and not contentious. All right? Now, I tell you what, some of our leaders nowadays, or struggling with that some. Now, if you have a leader, you kind of want him to be gentle, strong and firm. You don't want a wimp, but you can be strong and gentle at the same time, can't you? You know, look at a parent with their child. You know, the parent's strong, but is gentle with the child as it holds the baby. See how that works? And so a leader should be likewise. Should be strong, but be gentle and not contentious. And finally, your leader should be followed. So if a leader is out there and no one's behind him, then he's not a leader, he's just out for a walk. Okay? And so we need to be aware of this. So if we have a leader, you need to follow him because it gets kind of embarrassing. It's like, who's that guy? He's our leader. Why aren't you with him? Well, no one likes him. It's like, and he's your leader? Yep. 10th year in a row. This is not good. This is not good. And so we need to think about this and make some good common sense decisions about who our leader is. Now, you may be thinking I'm talking about the politicians, but I'm not. Okay? Now, I think a lot of this is you can use in that mindset, okay, when you think about choosing your political leaders as well. Now, look at Israel. Israel found themselves in this same predicament just a few thousand years ago, just right around the corner. And so let's see what they did. Look here at 1 Samuel chapter 8, starting in verse 4. Then all the leaders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. And they said to him, Behold, you have grown old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint us a king to judge us like all the nations. Now, was Samuel a good prophet? Wonderful. He was a wonderful prophet. Was he a good leader? Pretty good. Was he a good dad? I don't know. His sons didn't walk in the same ways as he did. So was he a perfect leader? Far from it. Now, he did do what God wanted him to do a lot. God loved him. He listened to God well. But his kids didn't walk in the same way that he did. Now, you may think, oh, why did he do that? Well, did Samuel have a good role model as a father? Remember, he was brought to the house of the Lord early on. And the one who raised him, his kids didn't follow in his path either. So he didn't. So big surprise, children that didn't have a good father grow up not to be good fathers. So same ways with mother. If you didn't have a good mother, daughters, you'll probably grow up not to be a good mother. But you can beat that trend. With the Lord's guidance, you can be a good mother, a good father. I know some people tell me, oh, I'm from a divorced family. I'm doomed to be a divorced person myself. You don't have to be that way. You can be different. God will help you, and you can be better. Okay? I think every parent wants their children to be better than themselves. I know I want that as well. My kids aren't here, so I'm glad they didn't hear that. And so what did Israel do? They rejected God as their leader. Okay? When they were deciding this, now Samuel's kids, boys, were taking bribes, okay? They were misusing the house of the Lord, abusing their office for a lot of different things. I'm not going to go into it, but it was bad. It was really bad. And so what happened to the people? Not only did they say, okay, Samuel's sons are bad, they threw away the institution that God put in. I would maybe say it was a knee-jerk reaction. Okay, because Samuel's kids are bad, we're going to distrust the way that God is doing it. And say, I'm not going to do this anymore. And it's interesting. They said, we want to be like other nations. Now, if I were Samuel, I would have said, well, how's that going for the other nations? You mean the nations we just beat up? The nations that God has given us victory over? The nations God tells us not to be like them? And they go, that's right. Wow. But that's what they were saying. We want to be like other nations. Now, hopefully, this doesn't happen to us as Christians or the church. But do you hear that sometimes? People in the church say, but we need to be more like the people outside the church so we can be more attractive to them. It's like, what? What's wrong with the people outside the church? Well, they're not walking the ways of the Lord. They're sinful. They're making bad decisions. And you want to be more like them? Right. It's like, what? And so, like Samuel back then, I'm sure he was confused. Why do you want to be like the people that God tells us not to be like? Why do you think that is? Why do people have this desire to be like so many more people? Now, this lesson could be like part 2 from a lesson a couple weeks ago about the wide and narrow path. There's just something inside of us that want to be like most everybody else. All right? But God has called us to be different, to be better. Look at the next 2 verses here in verses 6 and 7. But the matter was displeasing in the sight of Samuel when they said, "Give us a king to judge us." And Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said to Samuel, "Listen to the voice of the people regarding all that they say to you." Listen to them. "Because they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them." So see what happened? Samuel took it personal, didn't he? They rejected me, God. And he was sulking a little bit. And God said, they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting me. Yes, you're with me, so in a way they're rejecting us, but it's me that's taking offense. You shouldn't. And so we can learn a lot from this. You can be saying everything right, and someone could not accept what you say, and you can take it personal, right? When you try to lead someone to the Lord, try to give them advice, marital advice, or parenting advice, but they reject that. They're not rejecting you. They're rejecting God's teaching, God's instruction. So we need to understand that we don't need to take it personal, but it's to God, just like Samuel. So isn't it amazing how little Jesus talked about the leaders of the day? Fast forward to Jesus' time. How many times did Jesus talk about Caesar or Pilate or Herod? Almost none at all. Now, is this because they weren't important at the time? Contrary, they were very important. Caesar was God to most of the Roman people. Okay? And so the local leaders were very important in times of Jesus, but Jesus wasn't concerned about that. So Jesus didn't go against the law of the land, okay? He didn't go against it. He was following God's law, okay? And so this is something that we need to learn, that Jesus was concerned about spiritual matters. And so these issues that come up today about the elections that happen, you know, crowning a certain person as king, whatever it may be, it's like, okay, that's interesting, but a certain concern is to the point where it takes away our peace, okay? Because this idea, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Now, was this only true during David's time? Of course not. There's not a time stamp on this verse. This was true then, it was true during Jesus' time, and it's true today as well. God is still in charge. And so the question that a lot of people ask, who's king? Who's the leader? Okay? Now Israel, before they said, give us a king, they probably should have thought a little bit deeper, who is our leader? Because in being so quick to try to be like the other countries, they were saying, we want this person to be our leader. It wasn't just a rejection of Samuel, but they were rejecting God's way of doing things. So we have to be careful. Look at Romans chapter 13, verses 1 through 3. Every person is to be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. So, God wants us to do what's right. So don't get caught up in the leaders of today, the local leaders. Jesus didn't get caught up in it. He didn't say, oh, God's made a mistake. Look at this guy who's leading the Roman Empire. It was being so bad to the Jewish people at the times. And he didn't say, we need to overthrow this government or that government. He didn't do that. It's interesting, isn't it? Now, could Jesus have led a physical army to overthrow the Roman Empire? Yes. I believe he could have. I believe he could have done it without one of his followers from dying. I believe with a thought. He could have killed everybody against him with a thought, with a word. But he didn't. He didn't do that. And it's interesting, isn't it? Now, it's true, your voice, your vote is your voice. All right? In the country here, the way we do it, that's your voice here. All right? That's your vote. Now, how does that play out here? Now, it's interesting here that God does listen to us, like with Saul, that the people told Samuel, we're tired of this, we want a king. And what did God say? Remember? God said, listen to the people and what they say, and do it like that. Your voice matters to God. To me, that's a little bit amazing. Here's God, the creator of everything you see, everything you think that it could be. God created everything. And he listens to us. He listens to us. And sometimes he punishes us by giving us what we ask for. Israel's punishment, God spoke to the people through Samuel and says, okay, if you want a king, then this is what it means. He's going to send your men to war. He's going to tax you heavily. He's going to take your daughters for himself. All these things. Your best will be for him. He said this to them. And they said, okay. Once again, does not make sense, but they agreed to it. And yet, we do this. We do this. I have great peace about this election coming up of our country that we happen to live in during a short time. Okay? I want to encourage you to have peace about it too. Because to me, I have opinions about who I want to be elected, but really it doesn't bother me as much as maybe it has in the past. Because the way I see myself, you've heard me say this before, and I think it's good for us to understand this. I'm a Christian that happens to be American. Not an American that happens to be a Christian. We need to understand that. And what happens in this country, okay, of course I have an interest in it. I'm going to voice my opinions at times. But I'm not going to get so caught up into it that I'm going to allow it to take my spiritual peace from me. Okay? And it shouldn't take your spiritual peace either. Because we are Christians first. We are Christians before we are whatever country we're in. Because we have to understand that there's countries all over. What country is God's country? The question is, whose people are God's people? That's us Christians. You should take more pride in your Christian heritage than whatever country you're from heritage. It's not you just throw it to the side, but we're Christians first. That should be what you're prideful about. Be prideful about God. Because I tell you what, when you focus on your country too much, it'll lead you away from God to the point that you could be like Dostoevsky says, if there is no God, then I am God. You see how you can do that? You slowly move away from God, and then once you move away from God a little bit, you can move away from God a lot. We see this with our children. They move away from God a little bit, and the next thing we know, they're far away from God. It doesn't take much. And so what happens? People want to crown themselves God. I'll just take the crown and put it on myself. I am my own God. I make my own decisions. You shouldn't be your own king. It doesn't go well. All right? Don't you want someone wiser than you, better than you, to help lead you? I hope so. Now, if you think that you're the best of everything, wow, good job. We have some issues. You have some issues. Now, we all have things that we need to do better in, but we need to work at it. And so that's why, once again, I'm going to read this passage again and let it sink in. Psalm 46:10, be still. That means stop. Literally stop and think. Think about this. Be still and know. That knowing means to accept it, to understand it and accept it and apply it in your life. Be still and know that I am God. I am God. God, that creator of everything, He is God. Now, whether you accept Him as God or not, doesn't change the fact that He is God. And if you don't accept Him, it's not going to hurt His feelings. The only one that's going to hurt is you. Accept God. Because He says, I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. It is independent of what you decide. He's going to be exalted. He is going to be victorious no matter what we do, no matter who we elect, no matter what fights we fight. God will win. Don't you want to be on that side? For all of us, this life is fleeting. You will pass this life one day. Are you going to be with God at the end? That's the main discussion that you need to always have with yourself. So my king, who is my king? Is it going to be myself? Is it going to be a local leader? Or is it going to be Jesus? I choose who my king is. No one can force who my allegiance is with. No one can. I choose that. So when you think about it, it's not Caesar, it's not the president, and it's not me. That helps me. Now, you may need to tell this to yourself numerous times. Because if you put your trust in any of these other three people, you're going to be let down. Because if they're your leader, then you follow them. If this person's your leader, you be able to do what they say. Like I said earlier, if they're your leader, you have to follow them. For me, I'm not going to do that. Hebrews 1:3-4 says this. And He, Jesus, is the radiance of His glory and the exact representation of His nature. Exact representation. And upholds all things by the word of His power. When He had made purification of sins, He sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, having become so much better than the angels, to the extent that He has inherited a more excellent name than they. Jesus is King. He's above everybody, above the angels. That's my King. Jesus is the King of kings, the Lord of lords. If there was a city that had every king in it, every member of the king in it, that was king of its own country, all the kings that ever has been, they were in this city. So everybody you saw was a king. And all those kings had a king, that would be Jesus. All those kings that ever existed had to obey the main king, that's Jesus, my Lord, my King. Isn't that exciting? Now, whether those other little kings liked it or not, whether it be Xerxes, president of whatever country, whether they like it or not, that's their king too. And their knee will bow to him one day. It's much better to bow before in this world, before the first time in the next one. Look here at Colossians chapter 3, verses 15-17. And take this to heart, please. Let the peace of Christ, to which you were indeed called in one body, rule in your hearts. And be thankful. Let the word of Christ richly dwell within you, with all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another with psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing with thankfulness in your hearts to God. Whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, our King, giving thanks to Him, to God the Father. You want peace in your life? You want peace through difficulty? Then you make Jesus your King. Now, there may be struggles in whatever land we happen to be living in during this short time, but my long-term residence is in heaven, because that's my home country. Heaven's my home country, not this place. I'm just passing through. And I want you to take that to heart. Let it give you peace. Let it encourage you. Let the peace of Christ rule in you then, if this is true. Because if Jesus is your king and you still don't have peace, then you have to ask, is Jesus your king? Be kind of wild if your king's telling you to do something and you do what another king says. What do you think that first king would think? Well, then he's your king. Get out. You're taking up space. Well, Jesus wouldn't say that. Oh, yes, he would. Yes, he would. Look at this little video with me.
Jesus, I have decided to give you this.
Really?
Yeah.
You know whoever sits here makes all the decisions, right?
I know, and I'm always making decisions, but you make the perfect decisions, so you just sit right down and start making them.
Wow, I'm honored. I mean, this feels great.
Kathleen, guess what? I just got my new credit card. It's time to go shopping.
Oh, really? I thought your husband and you were going to pay off debt.
Oh, yeah. I mean, money's kind of tight, but I figured he doesn't have to know about it. So do you want to go with me?
No.
No?
Why?
What I mean is, I don't know. So let me check my schedule, and then I'll get back to you.
Okay, yeah, give me a call.
Okay.
Kat, what's going on?
What do you mean?
Well, I'm kind of one cheeking it here. Look, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. You wanted me to sit here, right?
Well, of course.
And whoever sits here makes all the decisions?
Right.
So what's the problem?
There's not a problem. I don't know what I was thinking. Really, please, here, sit down.
As long as you're sure.
I'm sure.
Okay, so let's start over.
Okay.
All right. Kat, I noticed that you've been losing your temper a lot lately.
Right.
So-
Okay, Jesus, you know what? I know what you're gonna say, but see,
You do?
you don't know the whole situation, you know?
Oh, well, all I'm saying is that your attitude is a decision.
Yes, of course, but I have a lot going on right now.
Well, I know you're under a lot of pressure.
Pressure, Jesus, you don't understand pressure, okay?
This isn't working, Kat.
What?
We can't both sit on the seat. It's either me or it's you.
Okay, I know. You know, I didn't think it was gonna be this hard, but here, just take it.
No, I'm not gonna take it. You have to give it to me.
Okay, here.
Kathleen, make a choice.
I can't.
You just did.
It's powerful, isn't it? You can only have one king. You can only have one person making decisions. And if it's you, then it's not Jesus. If Jesus says and God says, this is the truth in the Bible, and you don't follow it, then you're saying liar. I'm going to follow what I think is right. And God says, no, this is how you need to go through life in marriage and how to raise a family. Yeah, but that was back then. I want to do better. So what you're saying, liar. And God says, well, this is how you need to come to me. He's like, no, I'll just do it in a little separate way, my own way. Liar. How is God going to accept that? He's going to say, I'm not your king. You are your king. Good luck. It needs to be serious. So stop trying to take the seat from Jesus. Let him sit in there and help you to make good decisions. And you know what the good thing is? You may not always agree with him. That's what's so good about it. It's going to help you make the right decision. So be still and know that he is God. And I hope when you're still, you will know that he is your God. And if he's not, then make that decision. Make him your God. And we make that decision, we make that public by getting baptized here, and we take on the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. And so if you haven't done that, of course we want you to do that. Now is always the right time to do that. If you're watching at home and you've been thinking about it, please let me know as we sing this song.